Every entrepreneur has a story. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, where each episode your host, Brian Carney, will share a drink with a successful business owner and have them discuss their unique journey, gaining insight on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and the different ways to get there. Brian isn't just a beer nerd, he's also the co-founder of River's Edge Advisors, a financial planning firm headquartered in Delaware, specializing in working with business owners. It's time to pour yourself a drink and enjoy a happy half hour with an entrepreneur.
Hey everyone, welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur. I am your host, Brian Carney. My guest today is Greg Starr, the founding partner of Carvertise, an idea that started in college and that is now a multi-million-dollar, incredibly unique advertising company. Greg, thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. Excited to be here.
I'm really excited to talk to you. Now, you mentioned that you're coming off of vacation and you're not in a place where you can have a beer, but I'm gonna push through for the both of us. All right, so I'm gonna be drinking. My sister-in-law has a dog rescue business, out of the woods rescue in New Jersey, and she went down to North Carolina to pick up like 15 dogs, and she brought me back a beer from Raleigh from Trophy Brewing Company, and it's called Cloud Surfer. So I'm going to give that a try today while we talk.
Thanks for picking up the slack for both of us.
You got it.
I'm in no shape. So.
Well, I think we can all respect that. So, well, let's start. Tell us a little bit about Carvertise.
Yeah, Carvertise is essentially, we look at ourselves as the next kind of logical medium of advertising that kind of taxis and buses pioneered. You know, we're essentially thinking, hey, you've had ads on taxis for decades, you've had ads on buses for decades. You know, rideshare is that kind of next wave. And so what we're doing is we're kind of pioneering the space of placing ads on rideshare vehicles. So Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Grubhub, Amazon Flex drivers. And it's a nice win-win. I mean, these are people that, you know, they essentially own their own companies, right? They're mini entrepreneurs. They're driving around all day. And we're saying, hey, you're already driving, you're interacting with people, you're smart. Like, here's a nice way to make easy passive income. Just get your car wrapped for a company that, you know, you like and support and that needs advertising in your area. And so we're the kind of bridge between companies who want to advertise and drivers who want an extra money for just driving like they normally would.
So that's pretty interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys came up with this idea before the rideshare apps were really popular. So what was sort of the first generation of Carvertise, and how has that sort of morphed perfectly with, you know, the new quote unquote gig economy?
Yeah, at first it was like, what if we just paid people to put ads on cars?
Okay.
Those ads on billboard, like, and it was like car, you know, you talk to small business owners and they'd have their own car wrapped, or they'd have a fleet of trucks wrapped, and they would swear by it.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's my best advertising is my trucks or my cars. And so we knew that it worked, but there wasn't really a kind of a mechanism for like, why can't any company have a fleet of cars out there? You know, instead of buying, it's super expensive. Like, it's just like buying advertising on TV or whatever. So it was that concept that it grew from. And then where we benefited a lot from was the rise of Uber and Lyft, you know, and the economy. And then, that started getting big. And then also the rise of technology. So we're able to track and provide analytics on how the campaign is going. So that technology piece has really, allowed us to kind of build a company and allowed us to show ROI to our clients who are like nervous to try something different. So a lot of factors kind of, we were very fortunate to kind of do this at the right time.
Well, I think a lot of times when we talk about marketing, I think sometimes people confuse marketing and branding. And when you have the ability to use data to show someone the ROI on the investment that they've made, that's a little bit different than saying like, yeah, people are going to see you and then they're going to know you, but that doesn't necessarily, lead to more business. So that technology piece has to be huge. How did you sort of crack the code on that?
Just years of getting feedback. If you get someone who's asking you the same question as 10 other people, it's like, we really need to find out an answer to this. So, like most things, it takes time. And again, because the technology has been developed to solve this problem, We were fortunate in that time period, but there is also a place for, like, branding and marketing go hand in hand.
Yep.
I think the best marketers understand that you track what you can, but not everything can be tracked.
Good point.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's good marketing is a blend of creativity and data, but to just market for data, you're like, you can't have robots running your marketing department. Like, it's not how you build brands. It's not how you, create stunning campaigns that separate you from your competition. So it's a mix. You know?
That's a great point. I think if you're sort of using the data analytics as the sole reason to do your marketing, you might end up with sort of like sterile campaigns. Is that a fair way to say it?
Well, data doesn't always tell a full story. Like, if you're just saying, hey, I'm tracking clicks, but then not a lot of stuff's converting. It's like, well, what does that mean? And so it's all just part of the picture. But when you do know, and the most advanced marketers in the country, Apple, Netflix, they all know that
right,
branding is important. Like Coke, Pepsi, McDonald's, like, there's a reason you see them everywhere, because they know that you need visibility, you need brand recognition, and that's all part of the buying funnel.
Yeah.
So I guess when I say that, it's not just like bottom of it. Like, there is a place for branding and advertising, and what we do is we provide that branding and advertising, but we also enable valuable data points that help you tell if it's doing more than just branding.
Right.
Which is I think why we found so much success.
Yeah, absolutely. And so take me back to the beginning. So this is an idea. How does this even get started? Where does this idea come from? Sort of take me back to the inception of the company.
Yeah, so Mac started the company. We were both in college, incorporated it, and he presented the idea at a class I was in. He was like, "Yeah, ads on cars." And like, I knew him from a prior. It was actually the day after, like the Monday or Tuesday after we had like partied together for the first time, and we played Super Smash Brothers on 64. And I was like, "Oh, it's the guy I beat in Smash."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then life, right? And then I say Super Smash Brothers has been a really important part of my upbringing. But yeah, we met, and I just thought it was such a no-brainer, and I was really infatuated with the concept, and I liked Mac, and I was like, hey, any help? Let me help. And we worked on it senior year of college, and then fortunately by the time I graduated, no one would hire me, so took part-time jobs around Delaware. Mac was selling furniture out of his grandfather's house. I worked for Junior Achievement of Delaware. I tutored, I recorded music concerts. And, we just hustled. We were lucky to kind of be in Delaware where, people were very nice and supportive. And I think a key thing for us is we knew we couldn't make it happen by just like sitting behind a computer and hoping for the best.
Right.
So we were just very aggressive about like networking, and would talk to anyone who would take a meeting with us.
Yeah.
And, we made a list of people, Googled important people in Delaware, and then started reaching out to different, this guy, Alan Levin, came up, who happened to be the cabinet secretary at the time and CEO of Happy Harry's, who sold it. And, he took a meeting with us, and he put us in touch with the local ShopRite, Chris Kenny. They took a shot. All of a sudden we had our first real client, and then we got another client, and then that crazy story of how we got financing from a guy in North Carolina. And then before you know it, it's like, okay, we're doing $200,000 a year in revenue, and we can pay ourselves a $1,500 a month stipend.
Yeah.
And, the years of 2014 to 2016, we just kind of blacked out. Like that was just like a mess,
Yeah. That's, you did the old school grind it, you just grinded it out, talking to anybody and shooting your shot. So I will say the one thing that I find fascinating about Delaware, and obviously I've never lived anywhere else, but I do feel like in Delaware, elected officials are super accessible, and quote unquote important people in Delaware are super accessible. So you Google a list, you email a guy who owns tons of, of pharmacies. I still call Walgreens Happy Harry's, by the way. and you end up getting a meeting with him. So you think that this could have worked differently if you didn't start in Delaware?
I think it could have worked differently, but I think we were very lucky to be in Delaware. And I'll tell you why, because I think if we were in a bigger market like New York City or San Fran or Austin or whatever, we would have fell into it. We would have raised too much money.
Yeah.
So we would have gone there and been like, oh, we're this cool tech company. We would have raised all this money, and we would have went like this and then like this.
Yeah.
Because we were way too early to be accepting serious investor money.
Right.
And what Delaware did for us is it forced us to be so fundamentally sound and grow through your clients and develop mentors who were like, stop living in a fairy tale. Like, business doesn't work like how Uber built their company. Like that's not what this is. So, and another part of me is like, we're kind of just so stubborn. Like we could have seen this through anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but I think starting in Delaware was such a blessing.
Yeah.
And the community's been great. And, it's so small. It's so small in the sense that like, once you get one person, you can kind of get plugged into the entire scene. And it's a great test market. Like, so for us, for example, we're a B2B, we sell to companies to advertise. So once we were able to get, Wilmington University on board, we're able to go to Community College of Philadelphia, right? Yep. And so right there, you have a case study in Delaware that you can use to go to other states and replicate that in different places. So like the Delaware Tourism Office was one of our first clients. And, now we work with Visit St. Pete,
right,
which is one of the biggest, tourism places in the country. So starting in Delaware was really, really great. And you got to meet guys like Mark Doty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, to your point, speaking of someone like Mark, who's sort of a classic connector, I do feel like people here really root for other people here and are eager to introduce you to other people that can help you. Just because people want to see you succeed. And I don't know, it could be like that elsewhere, but it seems a lot less cutthroat and a lot more friendly here than it is in other places like New York or San Francisco, where, it's more of a, hey, try to raise as much money as you possibly can, blow this thing up as much as you can and sell it as fast as you can. So I do think there is something to that.
It's interesting. When we started out, one of my jobs was working for Junior Achievement in Delaware, and I had to sell sponsorships in Cecil County, Maryland. And so I don't know anything about Cecil County. I'm from New York. Right? I was like, so I'm like, okay, so I'm going to, all I know is to show up places. So I show up to Cecil County, and I remember going to a networking event on a goat farm. And then I started serving on their the Chamber of Council's Government Affairs Committee. And I go there, and I'm, like 21, I'm just like really out of place. But I go there and I'm just listening. And what I'm hearing from them is like, Cecil County, we do things differently here. It takes time. We value relationships. I'm like, okay. And then, I eventually get fired from that job at Junior Achievement. Now, I'm spending my time in Wilmington. I'm going to events and I'm meeting people in Delaware, and they're like, we do things differently here in Delaware. We value relationships. And I'm like, okay. And then I fast forward 3 or 4 years later, I'm in Philly. We're starting to expand, and I'm going around Philly, and they're like, Philly's a different kind of town. Like it's really important to get relationships. So to your point, I think it's more human nature. The idea that people want to do business with people they like, and every city is unique, and it's up to you to understand that it's unique and listen and kind of pay your dues. But I think where Delaware was unique was just the remarkable people in the business community who had such great skill sets and were so willing to help. So I think we would have got plugged in other places, but honestly, the talented amount of people we were able to meet with here is it's just amazing.
Yeah, I agree totally. Now, so you go to college and you study economics. So how does an economics major end up owning an advertising company? How does that transition happen? Number one. And number two, did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or did it just sort of happen?
Yeah, I don't, it's sometimes you're like, what's that song? by the wake up, anyway. How did I get here? I went to college. Like I was very impacted by the recession in '08. My mother lost her job. And so I was very interested in creating economic opportunity for people. So I got really into that and studied that. Then as you get closer, you're like, there's really no jobs in that though. So like, I understand how things work but like, what am I going to be an economist? I was like, I know it's math. I was like, I don't know. And then, I met Mac and like, I just felt like this was a really good idea. And like, to me, something that I don't know if I was always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but what I did know is like, I didn't want to spend my time working that felt like work. Like I wanted to, there's a phrase, be at play, right? Be in flow. And so I was just very in flow, and it was all about Carvertise, Penguin ads. And I got lucky because like no one would hire me. So like parents were like, find a real job. I was like, I'll try, and I can do that. It's just like, let me give this a shot. And I was 21 when I graduated. I was like, well, if you give it 5 years, like what's the worst that could happen? You're 26, and then
you're still young.
You got you got a lot of experience and, whatever. So I don't know, but I always did one thing that did motivate me was like, I would always like observe things and not speak up about them and think like, oh, this person should be doing that like this. Or like, if I was leading this and running this, I would do it this way. And and then that Teddy Roosevelt quote, being in the arena, it was like, I still remember reading that one day, and it was like, just like you're just a critic, like just do something.
Yeah.
You think you could do this stuff, so just like do it. And so that's when I met Mac and we started working together, I was like, this is that opportunity to like do something, and put, I don't have, there's a reason I couldn't find a job. It's like the skill set I had did not translate into the corporate world.
Right.
But I had other skills that, when it's just me and Mac, like, it's like you're free to express yourself, and then like we were just willing to like put in the work. Like that was the main thing. It's like a lot of people like they love the glory and the accolades and like it's an entrepreneur. It's like it's miserable. Like it's not fun. Like it's like you're not doing it for money. Like you're doing it because you like solving problems and on the path. So that's where a lot of people fail. Is like, it's like, come back to me in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like I hate to say it like that, but like, if you're going to do something, you need to put at least 5 to 10 years into it before it even gets to something.
That's a really interesting point you bring up. And I was just talking to a guy who's, he's like sort of a podcasting legend in the financial planning world. And he talks about how most businesses are like an iceberg. When you see you on stage winning awards, that's the part of the iceberg that is, poking through the water, right? What's below the water is, first of all, way bigger, way more, there's way more stuff going on under there. And it's the driving to Gary, Indiana in the middle of the night on Good Friday, or it's, moving to New York to set up to try to do sales up there. It's the grinding part of it that nobody sees. Everyone sort of sees the top part of the iceberg, and everyone's like, oh, I want to be able to do that. Well, it takes everything that's underneath of it to be able to get there. And I feel like that's kind of the experience that you've gone through as well.
Yeah. I mean, we've been through it. We're still going through it. Like at this point, it's just part of it. Yeah. It's part of you. And I give a lot of credit to Mac too. Mac is like very, like he can take a lot of pain.
Right.
He can, anytime you're doing something, you create a lot of friction, it's like metals rubbing together. So like weird stuff happens. Yeah. When you're pushing new. And so it takes a lot of like, you just got to want it. It's like you're playing pickup basketball. What do you want on your team? It's like, the guys who want it and will rebound and play defense, like you just don't want to go up against them. Yeah. That's like, as cheesy as that sounds, like it's so much, it's so much less about intelligence, or it's just who wants it more. Yeah.
That's such a great point. Well, since we talked about Mac, so Mac is, for those of you who don't know, Mac is Greg's business partner. And tell me what you do for the company versus what Mac does. And then kind of, talking about what it's like to have a business partner, because not everyone has that experience and there's highs and lows with that relationship. So Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
But I'm a little more front of the house at this point, which is sales and marketing.
Okay.
Mac is a little more back of the house, which is ironic because Mac is much more charismatic and like a bigger personality. And when we started the company, that was how I thought it would be me in the back of the house, Mac in the front.
Yeah.
But it just worked out this way, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why, but I think what makes me and Mac work together is, well, one, there's a level of respect we have, and there's an understanding we both just want what's best for the business. So your ego is out of the way. Like that's an important thing.
Yep.
So it's like you need like a first, like just an understanding that like you respect each other and like you can't let you get in the way. So that way like you can work through challenges. But we're vastly different. Like Mac will come at a problem like here, and I'll be like how do you even get to that point?
Yeah. I could have sat here for 2 days thinking about it. I would never come to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be over here. And then we find the answer is usually somewhere in the middle. You know?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we think very differently is helpful. And Mac just brings the energy. Like Mac is like a force of nature. And there's great partnerships. I don't want to, this sounds like, I don't say, it sounds like I was reminded of me and Mac's partnership when I read the book on Hamilton. I saw a lot of similarities between how Hamilton and George Washington worked together and how Mac worked together. I'm not comparing us to them, but like,
yeah, for sure.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like it's not quite, by the book, this person's more creative, this person's more numbers. It's not as clean as that. It's more of like style of thinking and energy levels that are able to kind of mesh very well together based on that foundation of mutual respect. But it's a thing, and it's taken 10 years to work out.
Yeah.
And there's ups and downs, and
so
like anything.
I love the idea. And I actually think the best business partnerships come from people who think completely differently, but you tackle a problem completely different, but you still have the same plan and the direction for where you want to take the business. So everything you're working together, but you're coming at it with two different minds. I also think a partnership can be sort of like a marriage where you spend a lot of time with your business partner and you fight. I use that in air quotes, but not necessarily a lot about different things. So long way to say, the fact that you're both able to check your egos, I think is really a huge part about any successful business. I think too many business owners get wrapped up in their ego and getting quote unquote credit for certain things. So how have you guys been able to sort of do that? Because I don't think that comes naturally to a lot of people that are hard driving type A entrepreneurs.
Yeah, Pat Riley he talked about the disease of more. Once things start going well, everyone wants more.
Yeah.
And, that always just stuck with me of like, just, remove the ego from yourself and don't worry about who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And what matters the most is building, and just focus on what you can like, cheesy Bill Belichick quotes, and it just becomes a part of you. And, like I meditate a lot, which helps kind of separate myself from the thoughts of, like wanting more and anger, and everyone has thoughts, but it's your actions that dictate, the outcomes. So being able to separate we call it the ego, which is angry and irrational and always wanting more, versus like the self, which is who you are in your soul, and just sticking more with that side of things, the yin to yang, and that's how I manage, at least. It's just yeah. Sorry to get a little spiritual there, but
I think that's a huge part of it, because you need some sort of outlet to be able to, first of all, shut your mind off in a way that it's not constantly on. I think that's a struggle. And to be able to kind of meditate and figure out, what's important to you. And I do think the thing that has come up constantly on this podcast, and it really comes up with that disease of more. I think a lot of people chase money. And once you get to a certain level of money, you go, okay, well, like, what's the big deal? I made X amount of dollars. Now what? Right. And I think that being able to sort of shut that part off and like enjoy the process of building a company is really what ends up turning, a regular idea or a regular company into a successful one.
Yeah. You gotta, have you ever read the book Shoe Dog?
Yes.
By Phil Knight. It's like one of the greatest stories. And yeah,
it is.
CEO for like 50 years. Like he's not, you like it. You like the challenge, the building, the pieces. Those are how the great businesses are around for a long time. That's the other thing too. It makes things so much easier.
Yeah.
Like it's just getting the infrastructure built out takes like 7 years.
Right.
Just like when should we have company meetings? Like, who should we do for payroll? Like stuff like that like you never even think about.
Yeah.
It takes so long. How do we hire people? Like, so once you like have that foundation set, and then like you can really start new ideas, testing things, hiring better people, you can pay people more.
Yep.
Like it starts making things, and like goes back to marketing is so important, it's so important to tell your story 10 times to everyone who hears it, because there's so much other noise. So yeah, you just gotta.
I think along those lines, you guys have done an outstanding job of marketing Carvertise. As leaders in the community, what you do, you guys win tons of awards. You're on panels. You're always talking about Carvertise. And I think that really, for an advertising company, I know I see you all the time. Right. And I think that is, you're sort of eating you're practicing what you preach. So I think that's a huge thing that you guys have done an incredible job. How have you been able to be so successful doing that?
I think part of it is we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Like we didn't come from an established background. I was a camp counselor. Mac was a telemarketer. So, I give Mac a lot of credit. Mac was like, I was very against marketing at first. I was like, I don't like talking about myself. I don't like being attention. And Mac was like in the opposite. He was like a big personality, big figure. But what he convinced me of was that it's just pragmatic. It's like you're doing yourself a disservice and the company disservice if you are not actively promoting yourself.
Yeah.
And the company. And if we're going to be leaders in advertising and marketing, we better become experts and show others that like this is how it's done. I look at executives of other companies who don't brand themselves well, and I feel like they're behind. If you're leading an organization now and you're not on the cutting edge of being able to tell your company story, your employee story, creating a narrative, getting people to buy into what you're doing, building a community, like those are traits now of called a modern executive that are essential, I think. So like anything, it took years of just messing around, trying it, not caring what people think. And, it's great to hear people say we're all over. Like that's very gratifying to know that we are in the periphery of people's thoughts.
I'd imagine if you own an advertising company and you say, you have people coming up to you, say, I see you guys everywhere. That means you've won. That means you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I want to jump to one thing in doing some research for our interview today. I listened to you on a podcast and you talked about something that's sort of near and dear to my heart. And then it led into another thing that's really near and dear to my heart is I think the art of simplicity is lost now. And you have sort of a mantra might be too strong of like keeping things really simple. And then you pair that with storytelling where people really resonate with a simple story. So talk about where that came from and how you sort of developed that over the course of time.
Well, it's come from the fact that I have a very short attention span. So like I'm thinking like what do I have to like if something's interesting to me,
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting to other people because like I can't like you're like let's do this podcast for an hour. I'm like how about a half hour? Like I just can't like I lose. That's just and Mac is on the other end. Mac is very thorough. Mac can sit in like a 2-hour meeting and dive deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yep.
But so I guess something that like triggers to me is like if I'm talking about something in conversation with somebody, or if you're getting asked a question repeatedly, or if you see a pattern in like your conversations, like that's usually a sign that like there's a narrative being formed. And I think people nowadays, they don't read, they scroll. So you've got like even less time to tell your story, make an impact. And that's where visuals also come in, So yeah. And you've got to be interesting, like it can't be boring. There's so many like company newsletters or company email blasts or like the communication that goes on right now. It's just, it feels corporate. Like it doesn't feel real. So even just the style of communication, the lettering, the font, the grammar, like that stuff all matters to just capture attention. And so, one thing, Mac did was this mentor series, which was just brilliant. Like we'd meet with Alan Levin and he'd take a picture and post it on Facebook and talk about what a great guy Alan is. And he is. And hundreds of people would like, oh my God, Alan's the best. Yeah. He's the greatest. Carvertise, and like, it's like you do that with 15 other people. And all of a sudden it's like, that's a whole thing. So you just keep trying stuff. I don't know.
No, I couldn't think more like you. So we're like cut from the same cloth. If you send me an email and it's a lot of words, I just won't read it. It has to be bulleted out. You need to cut to the chase for me. I can't be reading, an email for 15 minutes. So I kudos to you. I think that you're definitely right about that. And being interesting is pretty, if you're somewhat interesting now and with the way that everyone communicates in the corporate way, you're really interesting because everyone else is boring. So, that's sort of my 2 cents on that. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to tell the story about getting the website domain. Now we only have a few minutes left, and I saw Mac did an 18-minute TED talk about this story, which he told the story brilliantly, I might add. I was engaged the entire time. So, tell us sort of the abridged version of how you got Carvertise.com.
Yeah, so the company was called Penguin Ads at first. Mac was very insistent that the name of this industry is going to be Carvertise. Car advertise. Yeah. It wasn't going to be Carvertise with a Z. It wasn't going to be Carvertise.net. It was going to be Carvertise.com. So when Mac wants something, he usually gets it. And, we found the guy, the domain name owner. It was Dirt Worshipper 9000. So we started emailing him. Hey, we'd love to buy the domain name from you. And
hold on one second. Dirt Worshipper. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Dirt Worshipper 9000. And started, emailing this guy. We're like in college at the time too. So we also thought we would use fake names just because like, it was one of those things you're just like in college, you're like, I don't want him to know who we are. Like fake names, we're having other mentors send a letter. And, we finally get a response back. It was like $10,000. And we reply like, we don't have that. We don't have any money. We just said, how about 8,000 just to like get him talking and see what happens. Then he goes cold again. And then like, this is like 4 or 5 months in and Mac's like, I've had it. Like, let's find out where this guy lives, find out the value of his house, finds out he lives in Cary, North Carolina. So this is Good Friday, 2014. He's like, yeah, I'm going to drive down there.
Oh my God.
You should bring your mom with you. Like, his mom's lovely. And it might be like less intimidating if Mac's showing up there alone. It's like, well, bring your mom with you, and so they drive down and they knock on his door. It's a 10-hour drive, no one's home. They get coffee, they come back, it's like 9:30, 9 o'clock, and then this big guy answers. It's like 6'2", 250. Mac's like, "Hey, I'm Mac. Did travel this way to see you." He's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen your emails come in." And turns out this guy's like a multi-millionaire many times over. He bought and sold domain names in the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Dirt Worshiper is a reference to Ross Perot.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah.
But yeah, he just thought, he's like, "Yeah, I bought Carvertise because I think that one day people are going to advertise on cars and I want the domain name." And so he's like, $10,000 really isn't too much for me. So a negotiation starts between Mac, Dave Butler, and his mom. His mom is the mediator during like a intense negotiation over how they get the domain name. And we end up getting from that Carvertise.com, the trademark name to Carvertise, and Dave Butler wrote a check that night for $50,000 for 5% of the company. And yeah, that's how we got the name Carvertise. And
that's so insane that if you saw that happen in a movie, you'd be like, "Yeah, that's BS. Like, no way that happened." So Mac and his mother drive 10 hours or 12 hours down to Gary, North Carolina. Is that what?
Gary, North Carolina.
Yep.
Yeah.
Knock on some random guy's door who's selling your web domain for 10,000, and the guy ends up giving you a check for 50 grand.
Well, he wasn't even selling it for 10,000. He responded with 10,000 that went cold. So it was even more of a win than that. It was like a complete, let's just go see this guy because I can't get hold of him. It's funny. After that, people are like asking for advice on how to get domain names. It's like, I mean, you can show up to their door unannounced.
That worked for us. Oh, that's awesome. I love that story. It's so great. All right. Well, I got to ask you one final question since I know we're up against both of our attention spans. All right. I know you're a basketball player. What's the most points you scored in a basketball game ever?
I think it was like 24 points in high school.
Nice.
I had 6 threes.
6'3" shooting guard.
Yeah, it's point guard.
Point guard. I love it. You still play?
I do when I can. It's like you get older, like it's hard to find a game and it's this. Yeah, I love it though. Our team, our company likes playing basketball too. At our like company retreat, we ended up playing pickup basketball. It was a ton of fun.
That's awesome. I play every Saturday. Now I have to wear knee sleeves because my knees are, I'm an old man, and I look forward to it every single week so much that like if I play poorly, I don't want to say it ruins my weekend, but I think about how many shots I missed and whatnot. So 24 points.
I love basketball. You can tell a lot about people's character by the way they play basketball.
Yes.
Like there's a whole thing about the way you play really mirrors in real life. You got guys that are just like so athletic and don't know their own limitations and are just jumping around everywhere.
Yeah.
You got the big guys who want to just shoot threes and don't want to post up.
Yep.
It's just like, it's a whole, you got the guys who think they're irrationally good shooters and just like shoot every time.
Shoot if you're hot or shoot till you get hot, as we always say.
Yeah.
It's funny you said when you were talking earlier about how you can learn a lot about how someone wants to win. Last week we played 4 games. My team was 0-3. We were in the 4th game, literally diving on the floor, like we wanted to win so bad, and we probably wouldn't have left unless we won. But you're right. You can tell a ton I always tell my kids that if you want to see how athletic someone is, toss a basketball to them and watch them play. So that's awesome. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you. If people want to learn a little bit more about you and Carvertise, where do they go?
Carvertise.com. Check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm Greg Starr on LinkedIn.
Please go to Carvertise.com. They drove 10 hours to some random guy's house to get that. So that's really important. If you want to connect with me on the Untapped app so we can talk about the beers that I've been drinking, my username is brcarney7. To learn more about how our firm helps business owners with their financial planning, visit riversedgeadvisors.com. And finally, to hear past episodes of the podcast, go to happy-half-hour.com. Moment of truth, the beer that I drank for the both of us, outstanding. Cloud Surfer Trophy Brewing Company from Raleigh, North Carolina. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely would drink it again. Greg, Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you. Cheers.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for listening to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, sponsored by River's Edge Advisors. For more information on how River's Edge Advisors can help you, visit their website at riversedgeadvisors.com. If you'd like to connect with Brian Carney for business advice or just to share a beer, follow him on Instagram at riversedgeadvisors_LLC.